Mary, just to start with an easier question here, how would you describe your collegiate lacrosse experience so far?
Oh, wow. If I could describe my lacrosse experience here at Tech so far, I like to say that it hasn't really started yet. I know that sounds a little weird. I'm a junior now, so you would think it's like, okay, you have 2 seasons under your belt, but both of those seasons have been absolutely crazy for different reasons. My freshman year was the pandemic year, so started off really normal, and by the time season rolled around, we were starting to get into ACC play, and really starting to get rolling on what college lacrosse is. And actually our last game of my freshman year was like the first game I ever started. So I was like, all right, this is gonna be awesome. Like I'm finally making headway into like playing and being a part of this team, blah blah blah. And then the pandemic hit, we all got sent home. So it was a bummer. It was definitely sad, but definitely a weird perspective because I was only a freshman, so it didn't really hit as close to home as the seniors who were driving back on the same bus as me. So I was like, okay, it's just gonna be a break. I'll be back sophomore year, like no big deal. So then sophomore year rolled around, and obviously in the fall, I was diagnosed with cancer, and that season overall just looked really different for me. And it sophomore year wasn't really about like lacrosse. It was about more so like what I can do and what I'm trying to do personally, and just like kind of having this new perspective of like the people around me and the teammates that I have. And so this year is like my first normal year, knock on wood. But it's been really, really awesome so far. No COVID worries, hopefully. But it's going to be a really, really exciting season. A lot of experience and comfortability on my part, and being an upperclassman, even though I kind of lack experience on the field, it does have a different perspective. And I think this year is going to be really exciting for many reasons. We have such a good program, and it's really building and taking stride.
Yeah, that's great to hear, and that's awesome. And yeah, it's very much kind of like your first year, even though you've had a couple of years of experience, very different college experience to start. So you talked about how you got your first career start, and then the COVID pandemic hit, kind of stopped you, kind of dead in your tracks there as you were building that upward ascent in the program. Just what was the feeling going into that off season? What was kind of your mindset before any of this diagnosis happened? And you're just going in, you're like, hey, I'm trying to prove that I can start day-to-day basis and, do what's best for my team.
Yeah, so with the pandemic, every single senior and player that was on the team at the time was offered a fifth year. And I loved my fifth years. That year was awesome that they all came back, but secretly I was like, there's no spots being opened. All the starters were coming back. So I was like, okay, like maybe I won't be a starter sophomore year, but I want to still be right up there in case a player needed a sub, or like they were out for a game. Or I mean, COVID also, it opened opportunities, as horrible as it is. Like you don't know who was going to get COVID at the time, so you were going to be ready to step in a position that you didn't know may have opened right away, or like before a game. So a lot of unknown, but I think I was really motivated and competitive at the time. We ended in March, so I had many, many months to rest, kind of regroup, take a mental reset. I think those first couple of months during the height of the pandemic, I really focused on just like taking a break, spending time with my family. And then by the time summer rolled around, I was like, okay, now it's go time. Now it's time to get serious, train. I'm a huge advocate for not being hot when I train. So I woke up at 6 a.m. every single day, went to the turf to avoid the sun. But it was a good routine. And I think like that is like a good reminder. If I came in the fall and was just like, oh, like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? It's like, I'm doing it for the person that woke up every single morning and worked really, really hard. And I'm doing this, like, maybe I won't see the rewards now, but I'll see them later. So I think it was a really good competitive mindset. And I think it was really interesting because so many opportunities were opened because we were in such a unique time of college sports and sports in general. So I was definitely motivated. I was definitely well rested and just ready to compete. So that's kind of like the mindset I took going into sophomore year.
Definitely understand that. And yeah, I agreed with you. I'm very much a hot workout person, so I
Yeah.
don't like to work out in the sun. So I get that feeling. So, you're working out prior to the season, you're getting into the camp, and things turned suddenly. Just when did you first notice something was wrong, and what exactly happened?
So it was actually like a Monday. I remember like the littlest details, but Monday were our hard days. We were conditioning a lot because we didn't play fall ball. So kind of we took this perspective of fall that year of being like work grind. Like we're gonna condition, we're gonna lift, we're gonna be practicing really, really hard and get ahead while we can because we're in this luxury of not having to play fall ball games, but really just focus on ourselves. So it was actually during a conditioning drill that day when I started off fine, like we were doing 400s around the field, and then we transitioned into a sprint jog variation. And on like we did the sprint jog variations, and on the third one or second one, I got a weird pain on my side, and I was just like, this is really weird, but I don't want to be the person that drops out of conditioning. Like I just wanted to keep going. I think a lot of athletes have that perspective of like, don't look weak, like just keep going. But by the time the third one had started, I just said something's wrong, and ran off the field and took myself out and ran to the trainer. And it was just immense pain. It was something like I've ever felt before. And it was actually on my right side. So my trainer was a little nervous about it being on my right side. That's where the appendix is. And she monitored me for the rest of practice. She was like, do I have to call an ambulance? And I was like, okay, no, like, I don't want to be that dramatic of a person. But she was like, okay, I'm just going to check on you like every 10 minutes, like see how you're feeling. And the pain actually started to dwindle. Like I stopped moving. I was just sitting on the golf cart. And that was a good sign. She was like, okay, like it's a good sign that the pain's going away. Maybe it's not your appendix, but let's just get it checked out. And when she told me that, I was like, that is so dramatic. And I was like, why are we getting it checked out? I'm literally fine. Like, it's not a big deal. And she's like, I don't know. Like, something about it feels off. Like, I'm a little nervous. So we ended up going to get a CT scan on that Wednesday, I believe. And I practiced the entire week. Like, I was like, this is going to be okay. And the pain came every now and then while running or during practice, a drill or something. But I remember like running on Friday with my teammates, like after practice, not with the team. And I was like, guys, like it's happening again. And they're like, well, I guess you'll find out soon if there's like something wrong with you. You have a doctor's appointment in like 20 minutes. So I was like, okay, great. So I actually met with our team doctor and a bunch of other doctors here at Tech, and our trainer was in the room. And I remember being in the room and I was like making jokes. I was like, oh my God, like, am I going to die? And everyone was like, I was like, oh, okay, no. So then we were all in the room waiting. And I remember Dr. Rogers was like, we're actually going to wait for a different doctor to come in. He really wants to be in on this appointment. And I was like, that's so weird. Like, why does he want to be in this room so badly? Whatever. So once he came, that's when they told me that my appendix and everything on the right side looked great, but on the left side they actually found a large mass about the size of a baseball lacrosse ball. And that was just like an initial shock. Like that was so crazy. And so the first words out of my mouth were, am I going to die? Like, is it cancer? Because I didn't really know how the whole cancer thing worked. I just thought like, oh, tumor, okay, that's cancer. They're like, no, to get a biopsy to test the tumor. So they were like, we don't know. Like, that's the next step, is to get the biopsy. So it was the last thing I expected to hear. And it was total initial shock. I went through like the seven stages of grief in like 10 minutes. I was like laughing, I was crying, I made a joke, and then at the end I was like, all right, let's do this thing, like let's get it out, like we're good. And all of everyone was like, okay, like just take a deep breath, I think you just need to process it a little bit better. So that initial shock was definitely there, and just the last thing I expected.
Yeah, definitely a surprise and something that you don't want to hear. You obviously went through the biopsy, found out it was cancerous. Just what was that feeling like to hear that? Yeah, it's kind of that worst fear realized.
As we talked about before, it was a crazy year. This was during a pandemic. So I actually, before the biopsy, you had to get tested for COVID, and you can't operate with when you have COVID. So I just so happened to get tested for COVID. And on the same day of my biopsy that morning, my COVID results actually came back as positive. So just like it makes sense, of course. But I was like, that is the last straw. Like, I don't know what I was really like nervous because I was like, I don't know like if I can wait 2 more weeks to get the biopsy done. And ultimately the doctors at Carillion, they're such a great group that they were willing to pull through and honestly get me the biopsy, because at that point there was so much unknown that we didn't even know if 2 weeks was okay, like to let me just be in isolation. So they really pushed for me to get the biopsy done, and they were hazmat suits. I was in a shield, like, so I got the biopsy done, and I was actually in isolation for 3 days, and you're in a total of 10 days of isolation. So on the day 4 was my results. So I was alone in my college apartment, like room, which is really, really small. I wasn't able to talk to anyone. So, like I'm alone during this crazy time. My mom was supposed to come down for the appointment, but obviously she couldn't be around me. So that was really hard. So we actually scheduled the appointment for Zoom, and my trainer actually came over to my house, and like we sat outside 6 feet apart while we were on Zoom. My mom was on FaceTime for the appointment, and it was just a bunch of red flags going off. Like I was like, why is my trainer coming to my house? Why, like, the appointment got pushed back to the last appointment of the day. And at that time I didn't know, but that was a sign of like, all right, like this is an important appointment. Like we're going to save it for the end. So on a Zoom call is actually where I found out that I was diagnosed with cancer. And it was where my trainer found out, and it was where my mom also found out. So we were all kind of in the same boat together, hearing that news for the first time. It was definitely another time was the last thing I expected to hear. And I remember my brain like flipped completely, and it was I could see my mom on the phone screen, and that kind of was the most upsetting part, was not necessarily like how I was taking the news, but more so like worry for her. I was just really nervous. Like this, I'm the youngest of 5. So it's like, this is like her baby, like this is her last child. And I just remember telling her, I didn't even ask her like how she was feeling. I just looked at her. I was like, I promise you, like, I'm okay. Like, do not, I know you're going to worry about me, but I got this. Like, we can handle this. We've been through hell and back. Like we can do it again. And she was like, okay. Like, I think like reassuring her made me feel so much better. So, and then right after the Zoom call, I had to go back into isolation and sit in my room for a week. And I was physically alone, but getting calls, getting Starbucks dropped off at my door, getting thousands and thousands of messages. And it was lonely. It should have felt more lonely than it did, but so many people had my back. So many people were checking in on me that the 7 days went by faster than I could have imagined. So it was definitely unique, but it left you a lot of time to think of like what just happened, what's going on, what are the next steps. So but the call was overall scary, but reassuring at the same time, because the doctors, and my mom's a physical therapist, and Anne obviously is a great athletic trainer. So having all that medical background, they were like, hey, like based on what they're saying, like these results are going to be great. Like you're going to be okay. We aren't sure what the whole process is going to look like, but we just know at the end that you're going to be okay. And I think that's something I really, really held on to and made sure to tell every single person that checked in on me. I was like, I'm going to be okay. Like it's all going to be okay. It's just going to take a little bit of time.
That's great. That's a great mindset to have, to be able to push through that. And talking a little bit about, you mentioned your COVID-19 diagnosis. You obviously have this diagnosis as well at the same time. Just how are you able to push through those diagnoses and then keep your motivation up towards not just getting healthy, but being able to play again?
Yeah, the COVID-19 one, I think I was more upset in the moment about that one, because I was just like, this is the last thing I can take. Like, and I'm a social bug, so I'm like, I can't be in isolation. That one was really hard, but people really made sure not to make me feel alone. Like I said, I was getting so many calls, so many messages. But the cancer diagnosis was definitely something that in the moment I didn't really process and didn't really see the bigger picture of it all and didn't really understand the circumstances and the depth that a cancer diagnosis really is until honestly after my surgery. So I got surgery on November 11th, and it honestly wasn't until I went home for the surgery, out of the hospital, started to feel a little bit better, and Christmas break actually rolled around in December, and I wasn't at campus. I wasn't surrounded by 40 of my best friends every single day. I was alone in my room. My parents went back to work. My siblings they don't live at home. So I was really alone during that time. And that was the hardest time, I think. Personally, it started making me question, like, all right, that was a crazy, crazy 3 months. What now? Like, or like what just happened? And it was really draining, and it was really just at that point I was mentally and physically exhausted by it all. And it was really the time where I was open to processing and kind of took a step back and was like, okay, like, what do I do now? And I was just kept questioning, like, why did this happen to me? Like, why me? But not in the sense of like, ugh, like life sucks, like the universe hates me. It was more so like, why me? Like, I tried to find so much purpose in this cancer diagnosis to the point where it drove me crazy. And I think trying to find that purpose, I think ultimately led me to spiral into like kind of like a depression or anxiety or whatever it may be. And it wasn't until I was just like, it's not much so about figuring out why this happened, but what I'm going to do with it, what I'm going to do with the lessons that I learned along the way, what I'm going to do with this small, tiny platform I had in the lacrosse world. Like, the lacrosse world's small, but my name started to get a little bit more known with stories from US lacrosse and inside lacrosse. And that was a really cool platform to have. And a lot of people reaching out and like forming so many connections in the lacrosse world that I never thought I would ever have. So that was really cool. And I think making that switch of a mindset, I was like, okay, what now? And that's where I started to see really good progress in my physical play and my mental play, because during the time of December, I was not listening to Anne. I was sprinting on the treadmill when she told me to walk. I was running when I was not even allowed to. I was like, I need to get back on the field, which really, trying to push so much ultimately led me to take steps back in my recovery. And it wasn't until I was like, okay, like, this is not going to be a linear process. This isn't going to be black and white. This is going to be every single day is different. And like, I have a leg up. Like, I kind of spun cancer into being like the best thing to ever happen to me, because I had such a new perspective that all my teammates didn't have. It was that you can have it taken away in any second, any day, and life is so precious, and it really can change in the blink of an eye. And like, I had that leg up from people. And until you go through something like that, it's hard to gain that mindset, because you are just used to everything just happening because it's supposed to happen. But in reality, that's not really the case a lot of times. So, and also just the perspective of like, yeah, like, we're in college and this is lacrosse. And in the moment, it seems like the most important thing of our lives, but really, like, the most important things are our friends and their experiences and the memories that you make. And honestly, just enjoying lacrosse and enjoying the sport. I think that is something I had to relearn to love. I think I was going through the motions and so nervous to play, but until I finally let go and just really enjoyed the time where I was at, I started getting better physically and getting better mentally, and just enjoying the whole season again. Like, that season was so much fun. And I was surrounded by my best friends, and really tried to never take a day for granted, even if it was a day of conditioning or practice was terrible. It was just like, hey, I'm here and I'm thankful for it. And I think using that mindset was a total game changer and just a shift, and really got me to be to the point where I was like, I'm going to get cleared on 3 months post-op, and like the exact to the day, like I'm going to be back on the field. So I think that really is my greatest asset, is having cancer, which sounds really crazy, but it is.
Yeah, definitely. That's great. And that's awesome. And a great mindset to kind of have to help with your career going forward. And you mentioned getting back and being able to go to practice and finally play. Just what was some of the reaction from your teammates when you made your debut back on the practice field?
I remember I like it was my first time like doing the fit drill full out, and I caught the ball and I was going to clear the ball, but the whistle blew and I was like, did I already make a mistake? Like I was like, what's wrong with me? Like I know I'm a little rusty, but I didn't think I did anything bad, but it was really like everyone took a second and was like, oh my God, like that's Mary Griffin back on the field. Like, and everyone like took a second and cheered and screamed. And like, I was just like, that was so cool. And that's like a moment I'll never forget. And then when it got to the point where I actually got to play in our opener against Liberty away, and I remember getting my name called off the bench. I was like, oh my God, like I was running around trying to figure out where all my stuff is. And I went on the field and one of my teammates turned to me and she's like, you did it. Like you're back. Like you did it. And then we got a yellow card and I was not on man down defense. So I quickly ran off. I was on the field for like a minute, but I remember like my teammate just being like, you did it. And I was like, that I did. I was like, here I am. Like, so that was a really cool, like, moment. And just like I remember my sister, she wasn't at the game but she watched it on TV and like sent me a video on Snapchat of me like running in from the box, and her and all her roommates were like screaming, and that was really fun, just to know like how much they've been there for me through it all and like how supportive they are. It was a really cool moment. And it wasn't more so like everyone was like, why didn't you redshirt? I was like, it wasn't really necessarily like for me like to make an impact on the field maybe, but more so just like I set my mind to it and I wanted to do it and I did it. And that's what really counts at the end of the day. Like it wasn't really for the minutes to play. It wasn't really for the accolades. It was just to do it. And like, I'm just happy I was able to pursue a goal that I really set for myself and never looked back on.
Definitely an amazing accomplishment, especially so quickly after surgery. Definitely something to be proud of. And, looking at since your diagnosis, you've been a part of a lot of different advocacy groups. You teamed up with the Headstrong Foundation's Game Day Havoc event. Just how did you learn of the group, that event, and how was it teaming up with your former high school teammate, Marcy Salvatore, to help that event kind of gain its recognition?
Yeah, so Headstrong has always been a really big part in the lacrosse world because it was started by a lacrosse player at Hofstra. So it's really big in the lacrosse world. I remember growing up in high school, I would see like the Game Hair Havoc campaign being posted on Instagram, and you would post your game hair and teams would participate. And I always just thought it was really cool. And it was a really great foundation, but I didn't really look too much into it. So it wasn't until I got a call, I believe in October, November, maybe, from Pat Kaori, who's the president now of the Headstrong Foundation. And he was like, hey, like, I heard about your story, like, blah, blah, blah. And he just talked to me and was just really like an advocate for me and really by my side. And it wasn't until like after, or it was the first call, he was like, you remind me a lot of this one girl that like is at Stanford. Her name's Marzi. And I was like, Pat, like, I was like, this sounds crazy, but I actually know Marzi. We went to high school together. We were really close in high school. And he was like, no way, like you guys know each other. He's such a great energy. Like he's so big personality, spirited, passionate guy. So he was like so excited. He was like, you guys know each other? Like that's crazy. So his whole like idea was how a cancer diagnosis kind of rekindled our friendship. Like we were really close in high school. We were teammates, and obviously she was 2 years older than me. So when she went off to college, we didn't really stay in touch. It's just hard. She was in California. She's at Stanford. And then eventually I went to college. So we hadn't really talked in years, but it wasn't until I got like diagnosed where I reached out to her and I was like, can I call you about something? And she immediately was like, what's going on? And I told her. We talked for a while and we texted like every week, like for the next couple of months. We got together when we were both home, getting treatment. And that was really nice just to have a perspective. It's everyone's there for you. Everyone wants to support you, but it's different when you have someone that can relate to you. And especially at such a young age, it's not really common for 19 to 20 some year olds to have cancer at such a unique, weird age. So that was really nice, but we got together in December and actually did a campaign video for Game Hair Havoc and just the Headstrong Nation as a whole. And we told our individual stories and as well as the stories of us getting rekindled. And that was kind of the face of the Game Hair Havoc campaign that year. So it was really, really cool to see the campaign kind of be surrounded by us too. I mean, obviously it was surrounded by a lot of other people, but he kind of called us like the face of the campaign that year. So it was really fun to get my team involved and to see them really step up and get excited for something that I was really passionate about and really meant a lot to me and my family, as well as friends and teammates from when I was in middle school to high school, do Game Hair Havoc campaigns for them, for their teams. I remember my friends at Penn State, they actually played a video at the beginning of their game. And like I was in the video and they were talking about like they were doing this game for me. And I just thought that was really, really cool. And they wore ribbons in their hair and we did the same thing. But just to see like my friends from the past like really come together and send me pictures, they're like, I'm doing my hair for you today. Like that was really awesome. And I think it kind of gave me a lot of passion and gave me a new perspective of like, all right, there is something like good that comes out of a cancer diagnosis, and it's being part of such a great foundation. And this season, it's going to be even bigger. The Game Hair Havoc campaign is going to be even longer than it has been in the past. And a lot of more teams are getting involved. And I'm really, really excited for my involvement in it. And I think it's going to be really successful again this year.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's awesome. It's always great to see you be able to help in such a big, impactful way. So that's amazing. And talking a little bit again about your inspiration and how you're continuing to inspire people. You started your podcast, Not a 10. Just how did that kind of come about? And what is your goal by sharing these athlete stories?
So it's really funny because I always have like been like, I think I'm going to be famous one day. Like I just joke about that, but deep down in my core, I know it. But I remember driving down the road one day, I was like alone and just kind of processing, like, I think our season had just ended. And so it was really time to think about like what just happened that whole year. The season itself was insane. So it was the first time I feel like I could really catch my breath. So I was driving down the road and I was like, gosh, like if I could describe this past year, it would have to be a not a 10. Like that was just anything but a 10. And my lacrosse number has been 10 my whole entire life. So I was like, okay, like not a 10, like that's a good motto. Like, what am I gonna do with that? And I was just like, I'm gonna keep that in the back of my head. I think I took out my phone app or notes app and like wrote it down. I was like, not a 10, not sure what I'm gonna do with this slogan, but I'm doing something with it. And then I actually went on Lizzie Colson, who played lacrosse at Maryland. Amazing player, amazing person. She's teammates with my sister, and she asked my sister, she was like, do you think Mary would want to come on my podcast? And her podcast is The Lineup. It's awesome. And it was like a school project because she's into sports psychology. So great. My sister Grace was like, do you want to come on? I was like, of course. Like, you mean I get to talk to myself and talk to one of the best lacrosse players like in the country? Yeah, I want to come on. So I went on that podcast and I had so much fun. Like, I thought it was so fun. I thought she did such an amazing job. And I just loved every second of it. I was excited for when that episode came out. I loved listening to it. So I was like, I feel like I could do this. Like, I was like, this is fun. I think I want to try it. So I got home from school that summer, and my only plan that summer was to coach. So I had a lot of availability and free time. So I was like, I need something to occupy myself. So I was just looked up on Amazon, a podcast mic. My oldest sister, Claire, she also has a podcast. So I was texting her, and I'm the type of person is that if I get an idea, I'm jumping in. So like I had my logo made up. I had the mic coming on. I had episode outlines all made up in one day. I was like, okay, this is what's going to happen. And I think like the whole perspective of Not a 10 is what like I struggled with personally. It was during those 3 months that were crazy and getting diagnosed. I tried to put on such a brave face and try to put on this persona that everything was okay, that I was okay. Don't worry about me. That it ultimately led me to not really process what was going on and not really want to admit that I wasn't okay and that I'm not perfect and I do struggle. So that's kind of where like me opening up and being like, guys, like I'm not a 10, like I really do struggle. And just it being also my lacrosse number, come on, how do you like, it's perfect. And And then the logo of Not a 10 is also a 4-leaf clover because I'm very Irish, but I always find 4-leaf clovers everywhere I go ever since I was little, but especially during that fall, I would find them all the time. The day I got the pain, the day I got diagnosed, I would find these 4-leaf clovers. And I think it was just a good reminder of like, hey, like there's crazy stuff going on, but it's going to be okay. Like have that hope in the back of your mind. So that's where like the whole logo of it comes from. But just the whole perspective of Not a 10 is people to share their hardships and their journeys and what came out of them and why their life isn't a 10 out of 10, but why they're kind of happy and grateful that it's not a 10, because out of such turmoil and such confusion and such hardship comes a lot of good and a lot of lessons that a lot of people need to learn. And unfortunately, you can only learn if you go through something really hard. So I've had amazing guests on. I think I always tell people, they're like, do you love doing it? I'm like, I love it. And I don't even care if I get a single listener because I'm having a good time doing it. But people do listen, so it's okay. But I've had amazing guests on from people. I've had a great guy who is a quadriplegic. He played hockey and now he started a foundation to hopefully raise money for other quadriplegics and other people who are paralyzed. And he's really taking something bad that's happened to him and turning it into something that's really going to help the world. I've had athletes that have been injured. I've had episodes about body image and eating disorders. And I've also had amazing lacrosse players on it, just talking about their careers and a lot of different topics that people can relate to. That every episode I put out is actually like someone gets something good out of it. I get 1 or 2 DMs that really are like why I do what I do. And it's like, thank you so much for talking about this topic. Like I really could relate. And it's really opened my eyes to that a lot of people are really strong and are just so incredible and so wise and are really out there like being the change. And I think forming these connections and forming these relationships with the people that I've had on my pod, like is unbeatable. It's unmatched. And I just love every single second of it. And I really hope to continue on making episodes that people will really find help in and guidance in. So it's really rewarding and it's really fun. And I just love every single second of it.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's awesome. And that's great that you're so passionate about it and love it and so willing to help tell these stories and bring a lot of inspiration out as well. So to wrap up the conversation today, just one last question for you here. What can we expect from you in the future, both on the lacrosse field and off of it?
Oh gosh, a lot. I have high expectations for myself. So, I mean, we have our first game this Saturday against Jacksonville, and I mean, knock on wood, but I do think I will hopefully be starting and playing this year. So on defense, so I'm really excited about that and really excited to just have this new perspective and be a leader on the field and finally show my talent and finally feel up to speed with after all like my body's been through and all that. But I think overall what I'm really have high expectations for is Virginia Tech lacrosse as a whole, not even just for myself. We have such a great program and such a great culture. And I'm really excited what we're doing here with our new coaches and just having this new perspective. I remember I'll be at practice, I'll watch it, like, we look good. Like, we're going to be a force to reckon with. Like, do not forget about Virginia Tech lacrosse because we are going to make history this year. So I'm really excited to see kind of where we go with that. And off the field, I still am doing the pod. I actually have an episode that I'm recording Wednesday, and I'm really excited for it because I think a lot of athletes will be able to relate. It's about performance anxiety with one of the world's renowned like sports psychologists. He's really awesome. So I'm excited about that. And I still want to continue on doing the pod as long as it's something that makes me happy. I'm going to keep doing it. And I'm a junior now, so lots of internships are in the back of my head. So hopefully I'll land one. I've applied to a lot, but just really looking forward to starting kind of getting my foot in the door in the sports media world, which is my major. So I'm really excited to kind of grow up a little bit more. But I'm overall, the thing that's in the front of my mind is Virginia Tech lacrosse and where we're taking this program. So I think it's going to be a great season, and we're going to shock the world. We're going to shock them, and I'm ready for it.
That's great. That's awesome. Well, in terms of questions, that's all I have for you today, Mary. So thank you for taking time out of your schedule. I know we're going to be rooting for you over here, and good luck with everything in the season and the rest of your career there at Virginia Tech.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was so awesome.